Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're focusing on something that really hits home for so many people: housing security.
Right?
We're drilling deep into Australia's housing market, but, and this is key, we're looking at it through the eyes of someone thinking about moving here. A prospective tenant, maybe not a permanent resident yet, considering uprooting their entire life.
And arriving straight into what is, by all measures, a national affordability crisis.
Exactly.
And that's our mission today. We've pulled together some pretty serious reports from the IMF, the Reserve Bank, KPMG, Domain, and we're just going to extract the cold, hard facts.
No noise, just the data.
Exactly. We want to give you the real outlook for actually finding a stable place to rent.
Because we know you might be leaving stability somewhere else, a basic human need, for the promise of a job here. So the question we're really tackling today is pretty blunt. Is it worth it? Is it worth trading that for the kind of pressure we're seeing in the Australian rental market right now?
Let's get into it.
Good stuff.
Reality on the ground.
Okay, so the first thing anyone arriving is going to face is just the sticker shock. Rent is not just expensive, it's accelerating.
It really is.
And the projections from Domain show this isn't some temporary spike. We're looking at rents hitting entirely new national records by the end of 2026.
And the history here, the long-term view, is what's really shocking. I mean, if you look at advertised median rents over the 10 years to March 2025, they went up by around 48%.
Wow, almost 50% in a decade.
But the immediate pressure is even worse. Over just the last 5 years, the average annual increase has been 7.4%.
That's a relentless climb year after year. So let's make that real. What does that mean in dollars for someone looking for a place in, say, 2026?
The forecasts are pretty astronomical. If you're looking at Sydney, a house is forecast to be around $815 a week.
$815.
Units aren't much cheaper, sitting at $792. And it's not just Sydney. Look at Perth, which used to be seen as the affordable option. House rents there are projected to hit $731 a week, units at $631. So for you, arriving in 2026, you're guaranteed to be paying record costs. There's no escaping it.
So high costs, that's one side of it. But the other side is just the scarcity. I mean, you land, you get a job, you start looking, and there's just nothing available.
And that's measured by the vacancy rate. And this number is crucial.
Okay.
As of Q3 2024, the national vacancy rate was just 1.6%.
1.6. And a healthy balanced market is what, around 3%?
Exactly. We are running at about half of what a normal market should be. It's still well below the pre-pandemic rate of 2.4%.
A 1.6% vacancy rate basically means you're walking into a landlord's market. They hold all the cards.
They absolutely do. And in some cities, it's even more intense. The competition is fiercest in places like Perth and Adelaide, which have the lowest vacancy rates in the country.
Which is interesting because they became popular for being more affordable.
And that's the irony. That affordability drew people in from overseas and other states, and the demand just completely overwhelmed the supply.
So you have high rent and low availability. And that translates directly into what the reports call affordability stress.
Yes, and we should be really clear what that means. The official definition is when a household spends more than 30% of its disposable income just on housing.
So 1 out of every $3 you earn, gone, before you've even bought food or paid for transport.
Precisely. And in 2024-25, an estimated 1.26 million low-income households were in that exact situation.
And for renters specifically.
If you zoom in on the rental market, where new arrivals almost always start, 20.5% of low-income renters are in housing stress.
1 in 5.
1 in 5 households structurally under extreme financial pressure.
So let's pivot from the symptoms, the high prices, and the stress to the root cause.
Yeah.
KPMG says it all comes down to a massive supply-demand imbalance.
It does. And you can trace a huge part of that back to population growth. I mean, Australia saw this incredible surge recently. Net overseas migration, or NOM.
That's the number of people arriving minus those leaving.
Correct. It hit a record 518,100 in the 2023 financial year.
500,000 people in 1 year, all needing a place to live.
The housing market just couldn't absorb that kind of shock. It was impossible.
So how does that play out in the numbers in terms of actual homes?
Well, if you look at the projections for the next couple of years through to 2026, the numbers are stark. Net new housing supply is expected to be around 467,000 dwellings.
Okay, 1,000 new homes. And the demand?
The demand is for 562,000 households.
Wow.
The math is brutal. It creates a predicted shortfall of approximately 95,000 homes.
95,000. That's the number.
That's the number. That deficit is the engine of this crisis. For you as a tenant, that number is why you're in a queue with 100 other people for a single apartment.
So here's the really interesting part for me. If we know we have this 95,000 home deficit, why can't the construction industry just, build faster? What's stopping them from closing that gap?
The problems are chronic. They run really deep. The IMF points to these long-standing issues.
Such as?
Well, skilled labor shortages, for one, the high cost of land and materials, low productivity in the construction sector itself, and then you have complex, slow government regulations and approval processes.
And we've seen thousands of builders go bust in the last couple of years, which can't help.
It makes it so much worse. It removes capacity from the system. And the result of all these constraints is that building times have just blown out.
How much longer does it take?
It takes about 50% longer to build a house now than it did 4 years ago. We've gone from an average of 2.2 quarters pre-COVID to 3.4 quarters now.
Wow. So just when we need to build faster to close a 95,000 home gap, we're actually building 50% slower.
We're moving backwards. KPMG calculated that we'd need to boost new home completions by about 17% above what's currently forecast just to get rental growth back to normal.
And there's no sign of that happening.
Not yet.
Okay. So with that structural problem in mind, let's look at what the government is doing.
Yeah.
And specifically, whether their actions are helping renters or actually making things worse for them.
And this is where it gets really complicated because policies aimed at helping one group can have unintended consequences for another.
Right.
Domain points to the expansion of the First Home Guarantee Scheme as the single biggest demand-side driver for 2026.
This is the scheme to help people buy their first home with a small deposit.
5% deposit and, crucially, no lender's mortgage insurance or LMI.
Hang on, LMI, for anyone who might not know, what exactly is that and why does waiving it matter so much?
LMI is insurance that protects the bank if you default on your loan, and you typically have to pay for it if your deposit is less than 20%.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It can be tens of thousands of dollars. So by waiving it, the government is removing a massive financial barrier to entry. It makes buying a home possible for thousands of people who couldn't afford it otherwise.
So what's the predicted impact of that policy?
Domain estimates this could pull forward up to 20,000 first-home buyers in the first year alone.
20,000 people who would have been renting, now buying.
Exactly. So while you're helping people buy, you're also taking up to 20,000 properties out of an already critically undersupplied rental pool. IMF backs this up, by the way. They state that this kind of support accelerates demand and contributes to price pressure, especially when supply is so constrained. For you as a tenant, it's just more bad news. It means fewer options.
So what about the supply side? Is the government doing anything to build more affordable housing to offset this?
Yes, there are major commitments, but the timeline is everything. The government plans to build 55,000 social and affordable homes, but that's by mid-2029.
So years away.
Years away. Then you have the Housing Australia Future Fund. Round 3 launches in January 2026, and that will support about 21,350 homes.
So again, the policy helping buyers hits the market immediately, but the major supply response is spread out over the next 5 years.
And that's the fundamental tension. Demand is being stimulated now, but the supply side, which is what a tenant desperately needs, is facing a huge deficit and a construction lag that's going to persist for years.
Okay, this brings us to the bottom line for anyone listening. Based on all this data, what's the realistic timeline for things to get better? Should they wait until 2026, hoping for some relief?
Well, all the major analysis from KPMG, AMP, everyone paints the same picture for the short term. The supply and demand imbalance is going to remain severe for the next 2 years.
So no relief in sight.
We don't really see the imbalance even starting to correct until 2027 at the earliest.
Which means 2025 and 2026 are pretty much locked in as years of tight supply and very high costs.
Absolutely. KPMG is forecasting annual rent growth to stay in the mid-3 to mid-4% range for both of those years. And remember, that's growth on top of the record highs we already have.
Now, you did mention one thing that might help a little. Population growth is slowing. How much of a difference does that make?
It provides some breathing room, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. Net overseas migration is forecast to drop from that huge peak of 518,000 down to around 260,000.
So it's basically been cut in half.
Yes, but here's the thing you have to understand. Slowing population growth is like turning down the tap. The bathtub, that accumulated deficit of 95,000 homes, is still overflowing.
Backlog is the real issue.
The backlog and the construction delays are the bottleneck. Even with fewer people arriving, it will take years to build our way out of the hole we're in.
So for our listener, the new arrival, the outlook for the next 2 years is really just more of the same. Intense competition, record costs.
That's the reality. That 95,000 shortfall means landlords can be incredibly selective. And for you, as a new arrival, you need to be aware that you are at a structural disadvantage from day one.
How so?
You don't have local rental references. You might not have a massive financial buffer to pay for 6 weeks' rent up front for the bond. The whole system is difficult for every tenant, but it's especially hard when you're just starting out.
So to sum this all up, what we've seen is how government policy, chronic supply shortages, and a massive population boom have created this perfect storm in the rental market.
Right. And securing stable, affordable housing has become a huge challenge for anyone arriving in the country.
It's a critical challenge.
And that core insight, that structural deficit of 95,000 homes, plus the 2-year lag before supply even starts to catch up in 2027, that is the crucial piece of information you need. It's something many people might not realize until they're here, standing in that long queue.
And so here is the final provocative thought we want to leave you with. On the one hand, wages growth is forecast to stay strong, which is obviously a big part of why you'd consider moving here.
A huge pull factor.
But on the other hand, rental affordability is at a record low, which guarantees financial stress. So the question you really have to ask yourself is this: are those higher wages enough to absorb the confirmed record high rental costs you'll face for at least the next 2 years? Or, when you do the math, does that equation just not balance for you right now?